Hello, hi. Welcome to another episode of Heirs in the Kingdom with myself, Pearl. This is a ministry that is born of God. He wanted to remind his kids back home, and I happen to be available and happen to be obedient to the Father's call. And so I want to remind somebody today that you have always been an heir in the kingdom. The Father reveres you with so much love, the Father adorns you, and the Father wants to guide you back home to him, to remind you that whatever it is that you may be struggling with in this season of your life, whatever baggage that feels too heavy to carry, the Father wants to remind you that this baggage was always something that he wanted to help you with. And so cast your burdens unto him, and he will always give you rest. However, today's message is probably going to be a three-part. If you are touched by a message on this platform, to kindly share with somebody else that may need this message at this time, because we have to remember that we are all travelers, that we're always trying to find our way back home to ourselves, back home to our Father. With two or more gathered, the Father is always with us. And so let us, oh yes, one more thing. So I have a free kingdom guide, and this is not the entire guide. This is only an introduction guide that speaks on warfare, that speaks on some amongst the things that I help people clear. Not my might, obviously, but God through me. It'll help you somewhat unpack, right? To understand what was always running underneath the the landscape of the illusion that this world had tried to portray. We fight not against the flesh, honey. It was always against the spirit. It was always against rulers of darkness. It was always about principalities. And because I had started with that verse, I also simply want to get into today's message. Today's message, the Father wants to remind you that there is a dream, there is a vision that he has for you, there is a plan that the Father has for you. And often when you look at our lives growing up, there are voices that we've heard growing up that somewhat ministered to the part of ourselves that continue to feed the doubt, that continue to feed that spirit of someone trying to humble you or break you down or break your visions down, right? Because when you dream, there comes a point in life where if you are amongst people that don't know because they have not been able to unpack their own traumatic experiences in life, then they can only ever see life from their own limited awareness of their own understanding of self. And so, if life has always handed them lemons, they will begin to be and see and move from a lens of being like lemons. And however, though, what this sour personality or sour kind of character that the pain births and breeds in people is hurt people. This is where I want to take it. And so when hurt people, I want to remind you that there have been many dreams that perhaps God has given you, that perhaps God had shown you that this is what he'd want to bring up through you. There are dreams that God had entrusted you to put out. But somehow down the line, we believed in the lies that we weren't either worthy enough to hold on to these dreams or to make them a reality. And I also want to speak to the part of you that thinks that you don't have the capacity to make this dream come true. When God places something on your spirit, he will also simultaneously make a way to bring about whatever that dream that he's placed in you to fruition, to life. And so I recognized that there were so many things in my life that had been spoken to me that had dimmed my shine, that had really had me be in a pessimistic state of life, right? People want to call it, let's be realistic, but there is nothing realistic about what you see around you, because if life and all else forms first in the spirit, then everything that comes down to this 3D plane is only a manifestation of what has already occurred in the spirit realm. And so, if I am first the soul before I had the human experience, I have to remember that this meat suit is only a bodysuit for that houses my soul and my spirit. I say this to remind you that what you see around you, what people have had you believe that this was reality, was not. Reality had always begun inside of you. Reality had always begun internally. And so I want to say to you today that the parts of you that have been dimmed, the parts of you that have been pessimistic about what God has placed in your spirit, I want to speak to those parts of you today and say, may the dream that God has placed in your spirit come to form and begin to awaken within you. I say this to say that, honey, a lot of the times we were taught to compare ourselves. We are taught to thrive in a system that is pretty competitive. You begin to ask yourself, oh no, sometimes we look at things and we think to ourselves, nope, that field is already curated. There's no place for you. But I want to then speak to the part of you that feels like whatever it is that God has placed on your spirit is curated. God in Proverbs 18, verse 16 says, a man's gifts make room for him and brings him before great men. And so I want to speak to the part of you that has looked at everything else on a tangible plane. There's nothing that is impossible with God. I want you to know that if God birthed it in you, there is somebody that will receive your gifts. There is someone that is in need of your gift. There is someone that is in need of the calling that God births through you. The devil tries to steal, kill, and destroy this dream in the spirit realm by what we've entertained, right, in our lives. If you have entertained doubt, if you have entertained what seemed like was reality to you more than you did the voice of the Father, then that was the governance in which ran your life and your system. By telling you, sometimes when that dream wants to come up, you shut it down. You shut it down by saying, nope, I'm too old now. No, I cannot think that way. No, I have a family. But I tell you now, listen to what God says. There is, okay, so God in Ephesians 6 verse 12 says, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. The Father never gave you a spirit of fear. He's always given you a spirit of love, of power, and a sound mind. And so anything that tries to tell you to be realistic was only trying to steal the dream that God had placed in you. One of the things that I carry with me is that one say that said one of the most richest places on earth is the graveside, because there are dreams that God had placed inside people that they died with, $1 billion ideas. And so if this video finds you today, I want you to know that God is more concerned about the dream that He has placed inside of you. He is more concerned about you fully living in the capacity that He's always called you. I want you to know that God is more concerned about who it is that you be in this lifetime. And so cast your burdens unto the Father, and He will give you rest. There is one more verse that I'd wanted to speak about. It was in Deuteronomy. Okay, so God reminds us in Deuteronomy 30, verse 2. and you return to the Lord your God and obey his voice according to all that I command you today, you and your children, with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your soul, that the Lord your God will bring you back from captivity and have compassion on you and gather you again from all nations where the Lord your God has scattered you. This is why the systems were always against teaching spirituality. They knew that this was always the key. This was always the way, the truth, and the life. This was always your way out of slavery. This was always the way out of slaving away at a job 9 to 5 for someone else to make their dreams possible while you slave in your life force energy that cannot be birthing every bit of the creation that God has placed inside of you. But today we are commanding a reversal over the dreams, the visions, and the plans that God has spoken unto you. We are calling back everything that the enemy has stolen from you. We are claiming it in the name of Jesus. The Father says, when we finally figure out that we figure out what the devil had done, there is no other way but the devil to return what it is that was always stolen from us. And so I want you to remember today that your inheritance had always been in the Father. The Father isn't pleased about you slaving away your life. The Father has so much more in store for you. The Father wants to give you life and life more abundantly, but it also does require you to walk with the Father, to be in relationship with the Father, to allow the governance of the Father to take a hold and precedent over your life. Because once you begin to put the Father in the chair that he's always was meant to have in your life, he's able to help you heal those traumatic lies, experiences that have had you believe that you weren't worthy, that you couldn't achieve this, that you couldn't do this. Because we have to remember that God said we are the lenders and not the borrowers. We are the heads and not the tails. We are above and not below. Honey, a lot of people have gone astray because they do not know their authority in who God has always created them to be. But I tell you today that we command your kingdom identity back to you. We command your kingdom identity from the pits of hell. The devil has no other choice but to return to you what it is that he has stolen from you and your bloodline. This warfare that has bothered you through centuries, trying to kill your dream before you ever got to your dream. I speak to that part of you today. I decree and I declare and I command that life take root in all of the areas that the devil tried to suppress in you. I pray that life takes root in what God has always bestowed inside of you. I pray that everything that God had intended in you and for you begins to take root in your life. Loving, you can never do it alone. You cannot do it without the Father. You can only do it when you collaborate with the maker of all that is, because he is the one that has always reminded you that you had an inheritance in the kingdom. You had dreams and goals that can only be birthed if he is president of your life. Because see, God doesn't like competing with any other thing of your life, any other idol in your life. He is Jireh. He is Adonai. He is Emmanuel. He is the way, the truth, the life. He is the beginning and the end. And so I want you to know this today, that everything that the Father has placed in your spirit has all capacity to come to form and to life. It just takes you to surrender your life at the feet of the Father and say, God, I put my ways down and I take up my cross with you today. Show me, teach me. Show me what it is that you always have wanted to birth in me. There are people that are waiting on you to fully come into the inheritance of your spiritual gifts, because these gifts unlocks encouragement in someone else. You know, your gifts, there's only you who could do things the way that you do. And so though you may think that the system is curated or whatever, it was never you against the world. It was always you against you. Just always remember that you are not competing with anyone or anything, because there's only one of one, baby. There's only one of me that does things the way that I do, that speaks and articulates things the way that I do. And there's only God moves in us differently. And so I want to tell you to never count what it is that God has said you are meant to do in this lifetime. Your gifts will make room for you. Just always remember that. But it does take you to walk in that knowing. It does take you to silence the doubt that wants to convince you long enough to stay complacent, to stay in these mechanics that look safe to the eye. But that 9 to 5 isn't bringing you internal happiness. That 9 to 5 is only laboring from your life force that you could be utilizing to be building legacies. I remind you today that you are a legacy holder. I remind you today that you are a royal priesthood. I remind you today that greater is he who has always gone ahead of you and who is within you. Begin to move in your authority and watch how things that have taken longer in your life to even come into your prayerful vision begin to take root, begin to take form. Put God at the right seat of his rightful throne in your heart, and watch him burn away every and each illusion that wasn't meant to be there in the first place. I love you on today. Remember, you are loved, you are supported, you are not alone.